Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hormone Helper Podcast, and thanks for tuning in to this episode. I'm Coach Andrew, and today we are going to chat about the 5 signs you get when your hormones are imbalanced. So every single day, like clockwork, your body is receiving signals and giving signals in the form of what we perceive as symptoms. Whether it's physical or mental, this feature is the body's indicator as to what part of the body isn't functioning right. And we need that. We need signals from the body for us to be able to understand what the heck is going on. But for this feature to work properly, a symptom has to have a couple of things. It has to have a trigger, which is the cause or change that the body is going through. And it also has to have a condition. And I'm not talking about some type of ailment or disease. What I mean is the condition is what the body decides to do about the trigger or the issue. Now, it took me a long while to recognize for myself personally before I was able to determine my symptoms from when my hormones were off. So actually, from when I was having my hormonal issues, it took me about 2 whole years going back and forth with doctors. And during that time, I was always confused. I was confused to why my energy was low, why I craved certain foods, why my acne was bad, and why all of my hard-earned muscle just wasted away. And I've talked about my past hormonal issues on the podcast before, but the reason why I bring it up is because oftentimes people exactly in the same spot as where I was, they don't know where to start when it comes to how their body feels. Nobody ever really teaches you like how your body is supposed to feel at any given moment. So think about it for a second. Were you ever taught to look for what is wrong in your body? Did your mom or your pops ever show you what a bad skin condition looks like or how to tell if your thyroid is stressed out? The answer is probably no, because I can tell you personally, mine didn't. And truthfully, no one taught them how to understand their body either. But here's the interesting thing with that is no one actually had to teach them. So as a matter of fact, no one even had to teach you. And I'm going to reframe some of those questions in a different way. And then you're going to get it. Then you're going to understand why nobody really has to teach you this. So if I asked you this question, how can I tell if the food I'm eating isn't good? How would you answer that? Take a moment now and think how you would tell someone that, what the answer to that is. You'd probably say things like, it would make you sick. It would make you feel bloated. You would get queasy. You would start to lay out some symptoms and some things that would change, which means that you understand the indicators of what eating poor food can actually do to you, or eating food that's not good, as in maybe it's been expired or it has mold on it. We all know innately what that feels like. Just like if I were to ask you, how can I tell if I have a cold? You'd probably say things like, well, first you'd feel stuffed up, then it'd probably go to your throat and you'd feel a throat tingle. Then you'd probably get a headache before it turns into a full-blown cold, in which case you're coughing and you're hacking up a lung. So questions like these make someone think about the symptoms of how they would feel. And those symptoms often start with really, really small triggers like that tickle in the throat that, if left alone, become full-blown issues that end up with multiple conditions that now your body has to try and contest with. So I share this because as I go through these 5 signs, they're going to have with them different symptoms that some of you might already be experiencing. So when you hear a symptom that you have, it's your job to put a little mental pin on it, just a little right there on that one, so that way you can be aware of what the trigger could possibly be when I share it. Another thing that I want you to put a little mental pin on is that none of these symptoms that I'm going to share today are normal. These symptoms mean that the body's warning signals have been going for a really long time. And I can tell you, people get stuck in this headspace where they just accept the way that they feel because they don't believe that there's anything that they can do about it. But in reality, it's that very acceptance that from a mental headspace, it actually turns the body signal from danger, as in like, hey, you need to do something about what's going on, to ignore. your body is going to focus on exactly what you tell it to focus on. So if every day you keep ignoring the symptoms of what's going on, eventually your body signal is going to become weaker until you probably do something like hurt yourself or it gets 10 times worse, right? So also when it comes to these symptoms that are attached to the signs I'm going to go through, an average healthy individual shouldn't even experience these issues, let alone have them for over a 4-month period. So with your little mental pin, ask yourself how long you've been feeling this if these issues apply for you. So now let's go into the 5 signs. I want to start with the earliest one that people say is, and that's sign number 1, your metabolism starts to slow down. How many times have we just become accustomed to saying this, that your metabolism starts to slow down? So while common, it's not normal. If you start to run slow, it means that you are running cold. So if you were to think of your thyroid like a little thermostat kind of in your house of hormones, it's responsible for making sure that your metabolism is running as fast and as efficiently as possible. If you are running slow, it means that the body is not running efficiently at a high level, so it has to turn down your energy usage. By turning down your metabolism, it means that your body's body temperature is going to go down, and also the amount of energy in calories that your body consumes is going to go down. So, what happens with a sign of your metabolism starts to slow down is you start to gain weight. It starts to go around the organs to start. So, your stomach, a low part of your chest, your low back, in and around your hips. Because what happens is all of the energy stored around the organs is often the first energy to go. So if we start slowing down the system and we're using less energy, well, lo and behold, that's where fat is going to develop first. Now, alongside that, when our metabolism starts to run down, it means that our body's ability to push nutrients into push recovery has also slowed down too. This means that it's going to take you longer to recover from things, longer to recover from your runs, longer to recover from your workouts, longer to recover from joints hurting for any specific reason, because the body has slowed down the entire system. Ultimately, what that leads to is that leads to energy slowdown. So if you are using less energy, your body's going to try to ask for more energy in the moment. This is where you will start to develop cravings for sugar and cravings for salt. Because sugar means that the body needs energy in the moment, and we need more energy in the moment because your metabolism is run down. And salt means that it needs more hormones for your thyroid. And that tends to be the huge indicator. So when someone has a slow metabolism, for me as a coach, that's a big indicator to me that their thyroid is having a hard time. It's having a hard time processing hormones, and it's really struggling to assist the other symptoms that you have in your body. Now, after your metabolism is sign number 2. It's your digestion becomes weaker. That is sign number 2. Your digestion is a huge indicator as to how well your system and your machine is operating properly. So, first thing from a digestion becoming weaker is you start to develop food intolerances. This is where people are like, I don't know. I used to have no problem eating dairy and gluten. Now, all of a sudden, I eat these things. And I'm like, oh, when I eat gluten, it makes me feel bloated. When I eat dairy, I have to go to the washroom really quick. All a food intolerance is, it doesn't mean that you can't eat the food anymore. It means that your digestion has become so weak that when it tries to eat that food, it literally can't. It can't break it down. So it's forced to attack it to try and get rid of it. Because remember, we just can't have undigested food sitting in our stomach. That's crazy. That's going to give us tons of problems down the road with fermenting or rotting food. So naturally, the body goes, well, if I cannot digest it here, I've got to get rid of it. And in getting rid of it, what ends up happening is essentially you start to develop IBS symptoms. You start to have bloating. You start to have chronic constipation. You go from going to the washroom 2 to 3 times a day to going to the washroom once a day. And that is a big sign that your digestion is starting to be compromised, is if you start going to the washroom once a day or less than once a day. If you think about it, your food should not be sitting in your stomach, or what's left of your food should not be sitting in with your stomach longer than a day, because that's when it starts to ferment, just like if you were to leave fruit out and things just start to digest away. So when you're eating breakfast, or when you're eating lunch, breakfast should leave. When you eat dinner, lunch should leave. And when you eat breakfast, dinner should leave from the next day, because that's an indicator of a healthy system. You're not storing stool in. But if your digestion becomes weak, so weak that you can't process the food naturally, it's going to take longer to digest, which means it takes longer to build up stool, which means you're going to have a harder time with your stomach and your digestion. Now, I want to touch a little bit more on the IBS stuff. This little diagnosis of IBS, a huge red flag for you to put a mental pin on right now is you have digestive issues if someone diagnoses you with IBS. What I will tell you is IBS means that they have no idea what the hell is causing your digestive issues. So if you do an endoscopy or a colonoscopy and they're like, we didn't really find anything, I guess you just have IBS. That's a nice way of saying your digestion is so weak, literally anything can trigger it. So we don't know what's wrong with you. That's a huge indicator that you need to start improving your digestive health ASAP, because something hormonally or something digestive is going on. So bloating, gas, or the inability to pass gas is all food fermenting in your stomach. And that's where the gas comes from, which is huge. At the end of the day, poor digestion actually starts to affect your sleep. So people will sometimes have a hard time sleeping and will have a loss of appetite because their body and their digestive system is moving so slow. You're not hungry. And if you're not hungry, you become tired during the day, which means that you're up at night, which is huge. Now, what is this a signal for? This typically tends to be a signal for estrogen. So estrogen attacks the way that the stomach digests food, because it actually attacks the food itself. So when estrogen's floating around, it makes it a lot harder for your digestive juices to do the job that they were born to do, which is basically trying to split things up and try to digest them. So if you've got excess estrogen floating around in your system, you're also going to have poor digestion, because estrogen is trying to attack the food that the other juices are trying to eat as well. So just wanted to mention that. From a sign number three comes down to energy, and that's you're always exhausted. To me, exhaustion is the thing that every single person on this planet just discredits. We use coffee, we use stimulants, we're taking multiple naps through the day, and that is a huge signal that your output of energy is low and that your body doesn't have enough gas in the gas tank to maintain your systems. So energy at the end of the day can be a combination of two things. Can be a combination of cortisol, in which case maybe you're using too much energy too quickly, which can be a cortisol issue, or it can actually just be a digestion issue where either you're not intaking enough nutrients or your body's not getting enough nutrients because your digestive system is compromised. So ultimately, that means you could be putting food in your gas tank. Your body's not actually getting the fuel needed from the food, which leaves you with not enough energy, which means then you're chronically tired all the time. Now, if you don't have enough energy, that makes it really hard for you to tolerate things like exercise. So a big indicator for this, using this sign, is essentially you can't tolerate workouts. So workouts make you feel really tired, and actually, instead of actually giving you energy. So the more difficult the workout, the more chronically fatigued you feel. So like you might be able to do something like a steady state jog, but if you do like some type of a HIIT training or some type of a workout that really requires an excessive amount of energy, your thyroid will start to feel sore. You'll immediately have low energy right after, and you'll have to take a nap after your workout. That is actually the opposite of what should happen. You should release dopamine. You should have a high level of response in which you feel good after your activity. So you want to look at that. Now, just like when it comes down to having low energy, when someone is chronically low or chronically exhausted, it means that you get affected by stress and anxiety a lot more. So, if you have low energy running through your system, you're going to have a high level of anxiety and respond to stress poorly. This means that everything is going to make you overwhelmed. That is an indicator that your body might actually be too stressed out and either might have run out of cortisol or might not be making enough cortisol in your body, because cortisol is your stress response hormone. So if you're chronically fatigued, if you can't tolerate activity, and activity is a physical stress response, you can't tolerate mental or emotional change, which is dealing with stress and dealing with emotions that set you off, that is a big indicator that maybe you don't have enough cortisol in your body. So keep an eye on that sign. Sign number 4, you can feel your inflammation. While it's normal to have some inflammation in your body, you should never have enough to actually feel inflamed. And I don't know how many of us are just okay with being inflamed. We're inflamed in our stomachs, we're inflamed in our joints, we're inflamed in the way that we move. We wake up and we feel like we're not fully recovered, and we're just like, oh, well, it's another Tuesday. Let's get this going, right? This shows up as huge hormonal imbalance because inflammation is essentially supposed to be filtered out through your body every single day. That's why we sleep. When we go to bed, our inflammation is supposed to fully filter out. Our body is supposed to be able to fully recover, which means that we are waking up feeling completely revitalized. Now, if you're someone who's dealing with chronic inflammation, you're going to have what doctors call osteoarthritis, which to me, every single person in this world has osteoarthritis. All it means is that your joints haven't recovered and that inflammation is building in your joints excessively. When doctors diagnose people with this, it makes me laugh because I could go in as a healthy 30-year-old male and they'll be like, you have osteoarthritic joints. I can find arthritis in anyone's joint. It's not the fact that arthritis is there. What matters with the joint is your body dealing with the inflammation that's involving that arthritis. So if you have chronic inflammation that's building in your joints excessively and all of your joints hurt really, really bad, this is a really big indicator that you have a high level of inflammation, which is a hormone imbalance. Now, alongside inflammation building in your joints, inflammation also develops in your body as water retention, especially around your feet and your ankles. So, sorry, now we've got the someone's running a wood chipper outside, I suppose. Lovely. Story of my life, right? It's just a regular Tuesday. So from a water retention perspective, you're going to feel a swollen around your feet and around your ankles. So the reason why water pools is your body uses water as a transport system. So if your inflammation starts to build up super excessively, then the body goes, we need to store more water. We need to keep more water in pooled places. So that way we can provide almost like more lanes in the highway. We can get our nutrients out faster. Now, the reason why it appears around feet and ankles or lower body first is because of gravity. Your body doesn't care where it stores the water. And with gravity pushing down, it's going to make its way to the lowest point, which is your feet, it's your ankles, it's your calves. This is where edema and swelling tend to happen, or your hands, your fingers, because we keep our arms down. Very rarely are you going to see water retention unless it's like really bad with someone, like someone's inflammation is really bad, like in their face, in their upper body area. But that's a huge thing. Now, when we talked about the joint pain, another aspect of inflammation comes down to stiffness. So really bad inflammation actually starts to affect your spine and you start to have stiff neck and stiff lower back. So lower back pain is the most common symptom that people feel. They blame it on having their desk posture, which, okay, sometimes desk posture, sure, but they blame it on desk posture. They blame it on not moving enough. But the reality is if you have a healthy hormonal panel, your body is keeping inflammation from your spine at all times because your spine is needed for literally every single thing that you do. So if you have that, it's a sign that your body has not been making enough cortisol to deal with the inflammation, because cortisol is the hormone that deals with your inflammatory response. So we want to make sure that we're looking at this. I know that cortisol came up in here twice, but it's one of the most common signs that I wanted to share with you guys. Now for the final sign, okay, it's the final one, but it's a just as important sign. So sign number 5 is you start having menopause or andropause symptoms. So a lot of people know what menopause is, and that's basically a female's hormone cycle as it starts to come to the end. This is where women will go from a high estrogen state to a low estrogen state. Well, low to no estrogen, depending on what happens with someone. Andropause is basically a male's version of menopause, where you go from having good natural high testosterone to gradually over time having very, very low testosterone. Either way, these are big signs, and it manifests itself as adult acne, changes to your period cycle, hot flashes, cold sweats, but most importantly, changes to your libido. Nobody likes that. Lack of muscle mass for men, and reduced fertility for women. So all these signs are signs that you could be entering menopause or andropause too early. And this one is really, really important as a sign because it shows the relationship between your hormones estrogen and testosterone. And for both male and female, they've got to be in optimal balance in order for them to function right. So while most doctors will tell you that like menopause and andropause is normal, it's a natural part of life, I can assure you there's many men and women that I come into contact with that are well above 40 and they don't have any of these issues whatsoever. Great libido, they have great muscle mass, their metabolism is fine. So from my experience and also from looking at people's blood work all the time, if you are experiencing any of these issues under the age of 50, then this is probably an area that you should be focusing on first. Now, from an andropause and a menopause perspective, people can experience these things as early as mid 20s. Like I've seen people have hormonal numbers in menopause like 24, 25, and for men I've seen as low as 22 in my experiences working as a coach who have low testosterone. This stuff is not normal. And just because you have low energy, but it's tolerable, or you don't really have a great libido, but you're like, okay, once a month is okay, you always have to take into account a couple of things for these signs. You have to take into account your age. You have to take into account your body type because hormones change. And by that, I don't mean the pear shape, the apple shape. What I mean is where your hormone panel is at and what your natural level should be for you. And then, of course, an important thing as well, too, is to look at conditioning. So if you're someone who's exercised a long time or who hasn't, those three things can really affect where your natural hormonal level should be. So, right now, filming this podcast, I'm 31 years old. So if I'm 31 years old and I get my blood work done and my testosterone is at the level of a 75-year-old male, is that normal? No. So although it's in the range and within range legally of blood work, it's not the range that I need to be in for me to feel optimal with myself. And many things from thyroid, which is TSH, from your cortisol or cortisone, from your estrogen, and from your testosterone, like we talked about, many of those hormones have ranges. And depending on where you get your blood work done, that range will be different. And the important thing is that range that's done via your doctor is not a range specific to you. It's just, here's the general age 16 to age 75. If you fall somewhere in between, unless there's a gross issue, they're like, hey, there's not a problem with this. So this one's really important and you should be focusing on it first. So those are the 5 signs and symptoms that I see for at least with most of the people who join our hormone support programs, and the signs that you should be looking out for. I want you to remember as well too that our hormone reboot program, it's literally built exclusively to deal with hormonal imbalance, and it does that by balancing the hormones using healthy food sources. So we create your nutrition game plan, taking into account your body type, and we build it out everything from grocery store to the dinner table. Like, it's got the whole game plan. Everybody freaking loves it. Now, included in the program as well, we don't just focus on hormones. We do a custom movement and training routine along with our hormone reboot master guide modules. These modules, I consider them kind of like the foundations needed for you to understand what your hormones are and help you keep control of your metabolism. Ultimately, that's needed so you can maintain balance, because maintaining about like getting your hormones into a balanced state is one thing, but actually being able to maintain them long term, that's something different. You got to remember, depending on what age you are listening to this, you still might have 2 or 3 more hormonal changes in your life, right? You might have choose to have a baby, or you might be just going from 40 to 50, which hormones tend to change. Regardless of what that is, it's going to help you kick butt in a couple of things. Things like weight loss. So people through this 8-week program lose about 15 pounds, which is great. It can help you with a slow thyroid and help you reset that. It can help you with bloating or IBS issues. Will help you deal with cravings. Cravings are literally super simple to deal with, and so much more. And right now, the program is actually on pre-sale until Friday, July the 28th. So it's $150 off. And that program is going to be starting August 1st. So this is literally right in time to look and feel your best going into the summer holiday. Now, I know you're like, August, the best time to do things is July and August for me. And the reason why is if you can get tackling your health on the days where you believe it is busy, or where you're like, I've got a lot going on, then when it's slow in the winter, you just maintain, you just cruise, it's easy. So in my experience, the people who are like, hey, I'm going in on this now, they're the ones who can easily maintain it when kids go back to school, when life starts slowing down, and when they've got back into their regular work routine. So just wanted to share that with you guys. Now, for more information, you can check out the show notes for you can check out our show notes section, and that's going to have information on the Hormone Reboot program. Or you can email us. You can email us at info@fit4allstudio.com. And in the email, drop the word reboot. That's it. That just reminds me, Reboot the cartoon? Oh, that brought back such nostalgic memories. Oh, I haven't seen Reboot in so long. I just saw Reboot. I was like, what's a good word for the thing? But oh man, I got to go literally search up whether or not I can find Reboot on on YouTube. You can tell where my brain is today, but it is all good. Anyways, info@fit4allstudio.com, and email us with the word reboot, and we will help you get started. And I tell you what, if you drop in reboot and you actually drop in a picture of that reboot cartoon, I'll give you something special along with that 150 pre-sale setup. So that is all for you today. And thank you so much for listening to the Hormone Helper podcast. Have a great rest of the day, and we will catch you on the next episode. Well, it seems I'm all out of info juice for today. That's all for this episode, and thank you so much for listening. Please leave a raving review for me if you've learned something good, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you're in the mood for some more great content and tools to get your hormones on track, why not check out our free Facebook group and the blog on our site? We do amazing weekly trainings in our group that me and my wife call Tea and Teachings that give good tips for anything hormones and metabolism related. It's also a great community where you get to share your goals and success with like-minded people just like you. I'll make sure to drop both the Facebook group link and the blog link in the show notes for you. Or if you're ambitious like me, the name of the group is Weight Loss and Balanced Hormones. It'll say Fit for All beside it with a picture of me. So come and join us and have more fun.